Hello, late night story fans. Tonight's story is about staying understanding and good-natured, no matter how hard life or consequences can be. Kindness is always rewarded. We begin. Olivia and Ethan had always dreamed of taking a road trip across the country. From the moment they met in college, their love story had been intertwined with the idea of adventure. Ethan, a budding architect with an eye for detail, and Olivia, a compassionate nursing student with a zest for life, found common ground in their love for travel and exploration. Their first date was a spontaneous hike in the nearby mountains. Olivia had suggested it, her eyes sparkling with excitement, and Ethan, captivated by her spirit, eagerly agreed. They spent the day wandering trails, sharing stories of their childhoods, dreams, and aspirations. By the time they reached the summit, watching the sunset paint the sky with hues of orange and pink, they knew they had found something special. In the years that followed, they often talked about the road trip they would one day take. They imagined themselves driving along scenic highways, stopping at quirky diners, and camping under the stars. They planned routes on maps, marked places they wanted to visit, and dreamed of the freedom the open road would bring. The idea became a symbol of their love and the life they wanted to build together. But life had a way of complicating things. Ethan's career as an architect took off, and he found himself working long hours, often late into the night. Olivia, meanwhile, threw herself into her nursing career, driven by a deep desire to help others. Their dreams of a road trip were pushed aside as they navigated the challenges of their demanding jobs. When Olivia's mother, Helen, was diagnosed with a rare and debilitating illness, their world was turned upside down. The medical bills started to pile up, and Olivia took on extra shifts at the hospital to cover the costs. Ethan, too, picked up freelance projects in addition to his full-time job. Their once carefree conversations about travel were replaced by late-night discussions about finances, treatments, and the relentless pressure of their responsibilities. Through it all, their love for each other remained a constant source of strength. They leaned on each other during the toughest times, finding solace in shared moments of quiet and support. Ethan would often surprise Olivia with little gestures, her favorite tea waiting for her when she came home from a long shift, or a handwritten note tucked into her bag. Olivia, in turn, made sure to carve out moments for them, even if it was just a quick walk in the park or a cozy movie night at home. Their dream of a road trip seemed like a distant fantasy as they focused all their energy on supporting Helen and paying for her treatments. The weight of their responsibilities was immense, and it often left Olivia feeling overwhelmed and exhausted. But this year, everything aligned. Ethan had saved up enough vacation days, and Olivia managed to secure a 2-week break. With Helen's condition stabilized for the time being, they finally had a small window of opportunity. With their bags packed and hearts full of excitement, they set off in their trusty old camper van, hoping this journey would offer some much-needed respite. The open road stretched out before them, promising adventure and freedom. They laughed, sang along to their favorite songs, and marveled at the changing scenery. For the first time in a long while, they felt a glimmer of hope and happiness. On the second day, they pulled into a small, run-down gas station to fill up the tank. As Olivia was paying for the gas, she noticed an elderly woman sitting on a bench outside the station. Her clothes were tattered, and she looked weary and desperate. Olivia's heart ached at the sight. "Excuse me, ma'am, are you all right?" Olivia asked gently. The woman looked up with tear-filled eyes. "I was robbed a week ago and haven't been able to get home. I've been asking for help, but no one will listen." Olivia felt a tug at her heartstrings. She quickly called Ethan over. "Ethan, we have to help her." Ethan looked at the woman, then back at Olivia. "Are you sure? We're finally on our trip." But Olivia was already determined. "We can't just leave her here." They learned that the woman's name was Margaret, and she lived several hundred miles away, in the opposite direction of their planned route. Despite the inconvenience, Olivia and Ethan decided to help with her. They loaded Margaret into their camper van and started the long drive to her home. Despite the discomfort of the cramped space, Margaret sat with a poise and dignity that contrasted sharply with her disheveled appearance. Olivia and Ethan were curious about the woman who seemed so out of place and yet so composed. As they drove, Margaret began to share her story. Her voice was soft but clear, carrying a weight of sorrow and resilience. "I lost my husband 10 years ago," she began, her eyes distant as she recalled the past. "Robert was a good man, a kind man. We had a wonderful life together, filled with laughter and love. But he fell ill suddenly, and within a few months he was gone. I was devastated, but I had to carry on." Margaret went on to describe how she had spent the years after his death trying to find a new purpose. She traveled, volunteered, and sought out old friends. It was during one of these trips to visit a dear friend that she was robbed. She had been left stranded with no money and no way to get home. "It's been a humbling experience," Margaret said, her voice tinged with sadness. "I've always believed in the goodness of people, but being ignored and turned away by so many has been disheartening." Olivia and Ethan listened intently, moved by her story. The road stretched ahead of them, a ribbon of asphalt cutting through fields and forests, providing a quiet backdrop for their shared confidences. Eventually, the conversation shifted, and Olivia felt a need to share her own burdens. She took a deep breath, glancing at Ethan for reassurance before speaking. "My mother, Helen, has been battling a rare illness for the past 2 years," Olivia began, her voice wavering. "She was always so strong, so full of life. Watching her fade away has been the hardest thing I've ever faced." Olivia described the endless medical appointments, the mounting bills, and the emotional toll it had taken on her. She spoke of the nights she spent working extra shifts, the exhaustion that seemed to seep into her very bones, and the helplessness she felt as her mother's condition worsened. "There are days when I don't know how we'll make it through," Olivia admitted, tears welling in her eyes. "I feel like I'm constantly running on empty, trying to be strong for my mom, for Ethan, for everyone. But inside, I'm terrified. What if we can't afford the next treatment? What if she gets worse?" Margaret reached out and gently patted Olivia's hand. Her eyes filled with empathy. "You're doing everything you can, dear. Sometimes, that's all we can do." Ethan, who had been quietly listening, spoke up. "We've been trying to save every penny. This trip was supposed to be a break, a chance to breathe. But the guilt of leaving Helen behind, even for a short while, is always there." Margaret nodded, understanding their pain. "Life has a way of testing us in the most unexpected ways, but you mustn't lose hope. Sometimes help comes from the most unlikely places." The conversation flowed naturally as they drove, the miles melting away with each shared story. Margaret recounted tales of her travels, moments of joy and sorrow, and the wisdom she had gained over the years. Olivia and Ethan found themselves opening up more than they ever had before, finding comfort in the understanding and compassion of their newfound friend. As dusk settled over the landscape, the van became a sanctuary of shared experiences and mutual support. Margaret's presence was a reminder of resilience and grace, while Olivia and Ethan's openness revealed the strength they had drawn from each other and the love that had carried them through their darkest times. They arrived at Margaret's home much later than expected, but the journey had already begun to change them. The bond they had formed with Margaret, the stories they had shared, and the empathy they had received in return made the long drive feel like a pilgrimage, a path to healing and hope. Margaret's home, a sprawling estate that stood in stark contrast to the disheveled woman they had met at the gas station. Olivia and Ethan exchanged bewildered glances as they pulled up to the grand entrance. Margaret invited them in, insisting they stay for dinner. As they sat in her elegant dining room, she thanked them for their kindness. The next morning, as they prepared to leave, Margaret handed Olivia an envelope. "I want to thank you for your compassion and selflessness. You're the first people who've shown me true kindness in a long time." Inside the envelope was a letter, not a check. Olivia and Ethan read it together, their eyes widening with each word. Margaret had not only arranged to cover the full cost of Helen's treatment, but also provided a generous sum of money for Olivia and Ethan to take the trip they had always dreamed of. "I don't need this," Margaret explained when she saw their astonished faces. But you do. Use it to pay for your mother's treatment and to make your dreams come true." Tears welled in Olivia's eyes. "We can't accept this." But Margaret insisted. "Consider it a gift from someone who's been blessed and wants to pass on that blessing." With Margaret's generous gift, Olivia and Ethan's road trip took on a new dimension. They visited all the places they had dreamed of, and even some they hadn't planned for. They stayed in quaint bed and breakfasts, dined at charming local restaurants, and immersed themselves in the beauty and diversity of the country. By the end of their journey, they felt not only rejuvenated but profoundly changed. Their encounter with Margaret had reminded them of the importance of kindness, the unpredictability of life, and the magic of unexpected connections. As they drove the final miles back home, they held hands, silently promising each other that they would never let the pressures of life overshadow the simple joys and the importance of helping others. Their road trip was more than a journey across the country. It was a journey of the heart, one that had taught them the true meaning of wealth and the power of compassion. Thanks for watching or listening. Hope you enjoyed the story. Leave your thoughts about it in the comments. Hit the like button and subscribe for more upcoming stories. Good night.